Let's get to our top story this morning. The Department of Justice has revealed that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem made the final decision not to comply with a federal judge's order earlier this year to stop those deportation flights of alleged Venezuelan gang members under the Alien Enemies Act. According to a court filing, Noem was informed of the judge's orders to turn the flights around last March, but she decided that the detainees had already been removed from the United States so they could continue to be transferred to the notorious Secy prison in El Salvador. The disclosure comes as Judge James Boasberg seeks to revive criminal contempt proceedings against Trump administration officials who authorized the flights. The Justice Department argued the decision was lawful and consistent with its interpretation of the court's order, but Judge Boasberg said deportees likely did not receive due process. Additionally, a whistleblower has alleged former Principal Deputy Attorney General Emil Bovee told subordinates to consider ignoring court orders, which Bovee denied during Senate confirmation hearings. Plaintiffs want at least 9 current or former Trump officials to testify in contempt hearings, including Bovee. So, Joe, kind of a big development in this, in terms of this going all the way up to the top of the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, you know, I hope there are people around, Todd Blanche and Mr. Bovee, Judge Bovee, that can explain to them what happened to people in the first Trump administration that thought they were above the law, that thought they could go into courts and do whatever they wanted to do. They ended up being disbarred or having, you know, in the case of, I believe, Jenna Ellis, having their law degrees practice suspended for several years. Mm-hmm. I mean, this doesn't end well. And there's another problem here, Jonathan Lemire, and the problem is that they're dealing with a judge, Judge Boasberg, who's not some like 1960s Ninth Circuit hippie. He is one of the most respected conservative jurists in Washington, D.C. There are people on the Supreme Court who know him extraordinarily well. Long before Donald Trump ever thought about running for the Republican nomination in 2015, this judge that you're looking at right here was a rock solid member of the jurist community in Washington, D.C., and beloved and respected by real conservatives. So to try to paint him as some left-wing radical certainly is not going to work in Washington among conservatives, and it's not going to work on the Supreme Court. They know who Judge Boasberg is. They knew him well before they ever dealt with Donald Trump for the first time in 2017, either directly or indirectly. And so when you read news stories that Todd Blanche and Emerald Bovee both, according to news reports, told Kristi Noem to ignore a judge's orders, and Emerald Bovee actually saying to tell the court to F off. The consequences for these two men in the long run just aren't good. And again, all we have to do is look back to what happened in the first Trump term. I would say the same thing for those who are going after United States senators who are war heroes. This is all so short-sighted. And part of my Thanksgiving gift to them is to stop, think about what you're doing, and understand what I tell at some point, I have to tell everybody that is in the White House. You only rent this house. You're going to be on the other side a lot sooner than you think. Please be careful with what you do. And I would say that to these gentlemen because, you know, they've put themselves in a legally dangerous position now.
Yeah, there's no question of that. And Judge Boasberg, respected, accomplished, and clearly out of patience. He's made it very clear that this has gone on too long. He wants to hurry this matter along. The contempt process continues. And let's just remember, armed with these legal arguments from Bovee and others, what Kristi Noem did with it. She gave the order, per reporting now, to continue these flights to the prison in El Salvador, which is described as a hellish prison, one of the worst, harshest conditions on earth. And we now know, through terrific reporting from a number of our fellow outlets, just that more than half, I believe, of those who were sent there had no criminal records. We know, per reporting, the horrendous abuse that they received while there, torture-like conditions. Some reported of being sexually abused, not given any food, not given the ability to sit down, have to stand for hours and hours on end. And Kristi Noem decided to use that as a backdrop for a photo op. Let's remember, she went to Secy. You're seeing it right here. Standing in front of, glammed up, standing in front of mostly shirtless.
Jonathan, this is disgusting, but this is happening after this very person was the one who defied the judge's court order. She is the one who's going to be possibly held in contempt for ignoring what a federal judge instructed her to do.
Yep, and she's the one who's potentially being held responsible. She's the one who posed in front of these shirtless men there at the prison, who we know endured horrendous conditions. We don't know the identities of all of the men in that image, but that is what that prison is like. That is what Secy is like. And Sam Stein, it's stuff like that, images like that, combined with the images of masked, unidentified agents, storming into American cities, going into school lines, apartment buildings, using helicopters to raid a Chicago high-rise, only for us to find out later there were no actually arrests done there. Another thing just done for the sizzle reel, done for the photo op. But it's these extreme measures. As much as Americans, they maybe want a closed border. We're seeing that. But these extreme measures the Trump administration has taken, extreme and now it appears illegal measures they've taken, has led to this widespread backlash and why the president is so underwater on what's supposed to be his signature issue, immigration.
Yeah, you guys hit on the two elements of accountability that will come at some point in time. We just don't know when. One is the sort of extrajudicial actions that they're taking here that they will be held accountable for, whether it's in Judge Boasberg's courtroom or somewhere else. And the other, of course, is the morality and politics of what's happening with ICE. And, Jonathan, you're absolutely right. I mean, some of the images that we're seeing from these cities, frankly, is shocking, right? I mean, mass people going through streets, people being detained who are American citizens, families being ripped apart, husbands who can't find their wives. It's just an incredible hit to the soul of the nation and our psyche. And they will answer for that, too, frankly. If you look at any polling data, if you look at any sort of contemporaneous commentary from people who were with President Trump, I'm talking about manosphere podcasters like Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, who were with President Trump, there is real revulsion at what's happening around these ICE raids, a real sense that they've gone way too far in the extreme, questions about what the actual objectives are here. And if you look at the numbers of President Trump on the topic of immigration, sure, people are supportive of the fact that he's closed the border. But immigration, which was this incredible benefit for him, has become a weakness. The pendulum has swung in the other direction. If they keep at this, it's going to continue to swing.
Yeah, it really is. And David Ignatius, just one final thought on this about the permanence of Washington, the permanence of the Constitution of the United States, the permanence of these values about Madisonian democracy and separations of powers and checks and balances. We will hear every once in a while some very young person in the White House saying, these judges are Stephen Miller, these judges are taking control and trying to, I don't know if they use the word coup, but doing what they have no right to do, and that is to check a president's power. Again, when they say things like that, they're revealing themselves to be so ignorant of history. They're so ignorant of our Constitution, so ignorant of our founding. Alexander Hamilton I wrote in Federalist number 78, and I pulled it for this, that an independent judiciary is, quote, an indispensable ingredient in its constitution and in great measure the citadel of public justice and public security. That is in our founding document. That's in founding documents. That's what our founders believed. That is one of the reasons why when Richard Nixon was ordered by the United States Supreme Court to turn over the tapes, he knew he had no choice. And he turned over the tapes immediately, even though he knew his time in the White House would be over. And so, again, I hear some of these people, I understand a lot of them didn't have a good education and maybe they didn't study civics. But still, I don't study physics, but I know there are rules of physics that I cannot defy or bad things happen. And we have the same thing here. The complete ignorance of these people saying, defy a respected conservative jurist and just keep the plane flying. It is so short-sighted, and it works, of course, against the interests of these poor souls on the plane, but it also works against their own long-term interest.
So, Joe, it may be a question of ignorance of the Constitution, of the idea of an independent judiciary as being one of the foundation stones, or it may be contempt. People may know very well that's what the Constitution says, but that's not how they're going to behave. That's, to me, an even greater danger. I'm waiting for our Supreme Court to establish clear lines about the independence of the judiciary, appropriate legal conduct by officials. We have some extraordinarily strong lower court rulings by judges like Judge Boasberg. I have been impressed as I read decisions around the country in key issues, especially involving immigration, just how good these district court judges, the finders of fact, are. They look carefully at the facts. They write clearly, sometimes almost poetically, about our country and how it works. But we have yet to have a Supreme Court affirmation of the kinds of principles that Judge Boasberg is enunciating and the way he feels. Just to say one last thing, that picture that you showed earlier of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem in the kind of glamorous outfit, standing in front of a prison with these half-naked men suffering. I hate to say it, but that's a photograph that 30, 40, 50 years from now, people will look at and they'll be shocked. They will look at that and they'll wonder, who were these people? How could they have done that? And I think that's just something we should all think that's an image, sadly, that will stand for this period that we're living in now.
There's no doubt, David, it's so brilliantly said. 50 years from now, people will be looking at this time period, and they will be looking at that video image. And if you wonder why Pope Leo, and if you wonder why the archbishops of the Catholic Church, and you wonder why priests are reading Pope Leo's messages to congregants across America, talking about the moral crisis going on right now with harsh immigration policies. We're not talking about upholding the law. As I've said for 32 years in public service, I think it's a problem when you come to America and the first thing that you do is an illegal action. So I'm pretty conservative on this stuff, more conservative than a lot of my Republicans I served with in Congress on it. That said, you can do two things at once. And the inhumanity, the un-Christ-like behavior of how these mothers and children and grandparents are being dragged out of school lines, are being dragged out of preschools, are being treated in the worst, most despicable ways. That will be something, unfortunately, regardless of whether you're like me and you want a strong border, or whether you're more moderate on the issue. it's still it's going to be it's going to be a real blight on this time, and that's why I'm so grateful for Pope Leo and the Catholic Church stepping forward the way they have. I will say, Mika, one final thing too: the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, needs to stop allowing this ambiguity that allows the President of the United States to talk about illegally sending Marines, talking about sending troops to American cities, to, as he said to his generals and admirals assembled in Washington, D.C., or in Quantico, to train on American citizens in crime control. That's just illegal, and the Supreme Court knows that, but they won't take that ambiguity away from there. And one final thing, David's talking about these judges, these federal judges that have been doing a really admirable job, unlike the Supreme Court, who continues to wallow in ambiguity, and they're causing chaos in America every day that they do that. These federal judges, they're not left-wing hippies either. I mean, they're Trump-appointed judges. Some in the Comey case, they're Trump-appointed judges. Some in these military cases, they're Trump-appointed judges. They're Reagan-appointed judges. They're Bush-appointed judges. In this case, you have a lot of strong district court rulings that are creating the proper check on the executive branch, and it's being done by people who were appointed by Republican presidents, including Donald Trump.